It's March 27th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Trump's automobile tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump says 25% tariffs will be charged on all imported cars, ringing alarm bells for South Korea as a top importer to the U.S. Wildfires that ignited in the country's southeastern region are still burning after nearly a week now, leaving at least 24 people dead. The country is in desperate need of the rain that's in the forecast today, with hope it'll somewhat tame the fire. An appellate court acquitted the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung of election violation charges, overturning the lower court's decision. While the impeachment ruling for President Yoon is now likely to take place in April. U.S. President Donald Trump has pressed ahead with his long-worn tariffs on foreign cars. 25% tariffs will be slapped on all imported vehicles starting in April. Our Kim Bo-kyung searches off.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday local time to impose a 25% tariff on cars from overseas. The tariffs will go into effect on April 2nd, the day Washington is expected to announce wide-ranging levies on other goods from around the world. It will apply to finished cars and trucks that are shipped into the United States. This follows Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, which went into effect on March 12th. While saying this executive order is going to lead to tremendous growth in the automobile industry, he added many foreign car companies that already have factories in the U.S. will be able to expand their currently low utilization rate cheaply and quickly.
But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen before.
Inevitably, the tariff plan will significantly impact South Korea, which is the third largest car importer to the U.S. following Mexico and Japan. In 2024, South Korea's automobile exports to the U.S. amounted to around 34 billion U.S. dollars, about 51 trillion Korean won, accounting for more than 49% of the total automobile exports. Amid such tariff pressure, Hyundai Motor Group has come up with a strategy to overcome this by expanding local production in the U.S. On Monday, it announced an investment of worth 21 billion U.S. dollars in the U.S. over the next 4 years, including a plan for Hyundai Steel to build a new plant in Louisiana, which is set to supply steel for Hyundai's auto parts and auto plants in Alabama and Georgia. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Wildfires that have pierced through South Korea's southeastern area for the past week are still burning. We head over to one of the hardest hit areas, Andong, with our Euni standing by. Euni, how are things looking as of this morning?
Yes, Dami, I'm in Andong City in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province. Firefighting efforts resumed at around 6:30 a.m. this morning, with more than 4,500 personnel and nearly 80 helicopters to be deployed or already deployed to the scene. I'm currently in a village that has been severely impacted by the wildfire, with small fires still burning and destroyed houses nearby, and the mountains behind me are barely visible through the smoke. Multiple casualties have been reported in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province and Gyeongsangnam-do Province as people fled the fires, with the latest provisional estimate of at least 24 people dead and at least 26 Wednesday. While many died while evacuating yesterday, one elderly person was found to have been completely consumed by the fire. The pilot of a firefighting helicopter was also killed in a crash in Uiseong-gun County on the same day. The areas most heavily impacted are Uiseong-gun County and Andong City in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, where the Korea Forest Service says an estimated 370 square kilometers of the region is on fire or affected by smoke. As of Wednesday, over 23,000 people are taking shelter in temporary facilities in the province. Also, more than 200 structures, including homes, factories, and cultural heritage sites, have been damaged by the flames. The wildfires started in Uiseong-gun County on Saturday and continue to spread to northeastern cities and counties in the province due to strong winds, including the counties of Yeongdeok, Yeongyang, Andong, Cheongsong, and that are the 5 cities across the region.
Ani, I do have to say this is when we really need that rain to put out the fire. And thankfully, some rain is in the forecast down there, right?
Yes, I'm eagerly waiting for the raincast from this morning. It actually started raining in some regions. However, the expected amount is small, so it is uncertain if it will help extinguish the fire. A light rain of around 5 mm is expected in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, where a dry weather advisory is still in effect. Also in Gyeongsangnam-do province, rain 5 to 20 millimeters is expected, and light rain is expected to begin around noon in the counties of Sancheong and Hadong, while wildfires have been raging for 7 days now. Over there, more than 1,500 residents were relocated to shelters as of Wednesday. Overall, in the provinces of Gyeongsangbuk-do and Gyeongsangnam-do, the overnight fire containment progress is still being calculated and is expected to be updated throughout the day. That's all I have for you, Dami.
All right, Uni, thank you for that report. That was our Uni reporting live from Andong in Gyeongsangbuk-do province. So it's not just people the fires have put at danger. The disastrous wildfires have also engulfed a number of historic sites, pushing authorities to relocate some national treasures. Lee Jae-myung has more.
The wildfires raging in Sangcheong-gun and Hadong-gun counties have now spread to the Jirisan National Park. Jirisan National Park is considered a sacred mountain to the people of Korea and was the first national park in the country. Forestry officials have made every effort to prevent the further spreading of the wildfire at the national park by spraying fire retardants and mobilizing helicopters. Residents and livestock are being evacuated from the area, and major cultural heritage items, including national treasures, are also being moved to safety. By Wednesday, the Korea Heritage Service said it had moved 15 historic pieces to safety from areas affected by wildfires. Among them are 10 national treasures, including a seated stone Buddha statue from the now destroyed Gounsa Temple in Iseong. 15 national heritage items have been destroyed by wildfires, including 11 designated as national heritage and 4 as provincial heritage. While items can be moved to safety more freely, sites such as temples are impossible to move. This has led to historically important temples like Gounsa Temple being damaged.
This temple is an important and historic temple where many masters and believers have been practicing and receiving comfort for over 1,300 years. It is a place of comfort for many people, but I am very afraid that it may disappear.
The Korea Heritage Service on Tuesday issued the highest national heritage disaster alert level. In the 4-tier alert system, the KHS issued the serious level for the first time ever. The KHS explained that the highest alert level was issued due to the very high risk of damage to the national heritage items and sites due to the rapidly spreading wildfires. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Now, on the political front, an appellate court on Wednesday acquitted the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung of election violation charges, overturning the lower court's decision. Our correspondent Shin-young reports.
The main opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung has been acquitted by an appeals court with regard to election violation charges. The Seoul High Court on Wednesday overturned a ruling by a lower court which had handed Lee a suspended prison term. Lee was indicted on charges of making false statements in December 2021 during a media interview where he denied knowing the late Kim Moon-gi, an executive involved in a development scandal in Seongnam City where Lee previously served as mayor. He is also accused of having made false claims that there was pressure from South Korea's land ministry to rezone a research institute site in the Baekhyun-dong area. The appellate court ruled that neither of the statements made by Lee can be seen as spreading false information, overturning the Seoul Central District Court's ruling in November. The lower court found Lee guilty of making false statements, though it said that parts of statements regarding Kim could not be considered a violation of the election law. It handed Lee a 1-year prison sentence, suspended for 2 years. Prosecutors demanded the Seoul High Court give a 2-year prison term for Lee during the appellate trial, the same sentence as they demanded in the first trial. Right after the ruling, Lee thanked the court for delivering what he called a proper ruling.
I appreciate the court for delivering a proper ruling based on truth and justice, but it's frustrating that so much effort and national resources were spent on something so obvious.
The DP also welcomed the ruling, saying that the investigation and indictment were baseless from the start. Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party expressed regret over court's ruling and said that it will wait for the Supreme Court's decision.
We deeply regret this ruling. Many politicians have lost their political careers due to false statement charges, so I can't understand how Lee was acquitted on the same issue, even from a legal professional's perspective.
The prosecution announced that it will appeal the Seoul High Court's ruling at the Supreme Court. Now, if the Supreme Court decides to overturn Wednesday's ruling, sentencing Lee to a fine of 1 million Korean won, which is about $680 or more, he would lose his legislative seat and be barred from running in elections for 5 years. If sentenced to a prison term, the ban extends to 10 years. 신하영, Arirang News.
While the acquittal has maybe paved a smoother path for Lee and his presidential bid, we are still waiting for another big political event here, the ruling for President Yoon's impeachment. Let's turn to a legal expert, Kwon Hyuk-sung. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Would you say there are now no hurdles left for Lee Jae-myung as a potential presidential candidate? I mean, the Supreme Court's final judgment is still on the way, isn't it?
Yes, I think it is premature to say that all of Lee Jae-myung's legal risks have been completely eliminated. However, the most critical risk, one that could have invalidated his presidential candidacy, was effectively removed with yesterday's court's decision. There remains a possibility that the High Court's ruling could be overturned by the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court does not re-examine factual findings. It focuses solely on legal issues. For that reason, it is generally unlikely that the High Court's decision will be reversed. Nonetheless, based on the judgment rendered yesterday, some questions how the Supreme Court will interpret the legal distinction between a false statement of fact and a mere expression of opinion, which lies at the heart of this case.
Well, like you said, we are still waiting for the Supreme Court's ruling, which will mainly focus on legal issues. Now, why then, let's talk about the timing of the Supreme Court's ruling. Does timing matter in any way? When will the final ruling come then?
There are significant political implications. So if President Yoon is impeached, an early presidential election would be almost inevitable.
Right.
In that scenario, yesterday's ruling positions Lee Jae-myung as a leading contender for the presidency. Should Lee be elected president, the ongoing trials would be suspended during his term in office. Conversely, if the Supreme Court delivers a guilty verdict before the presidential election, it is highly likely that Lee would be disqualified as a candidate immediately. So therefore, the timing of the Supreme Court's decision on Lee's case could have far-reaching political consequences, depending on whether it is delivered before or after the potential election. It is assumed that the Supreme Court's decision will be sentenced within 3 months.
Well, and immediately after the acquittal on Wednesday, the prosecutors say they are appealing the ruling that cleared the opposition leader. Tell us more about that. No surprise here, right?
Yes. Like you mentioned, and according to press reports, the prosecution already appealed to the Supreme Court. Given the political weight and public interest, I think it was hard for the prosecution not to appeal. In addition, some argued that there is still room for a legal dispute over whether Lee Jae-myung's remarks can be interpreted in legal as false information of facts or merely the expression of opinion.
Well, two major political events are down this week. One, the court's dismissal of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment, and the acquittal for Lee Jae-myung yesterday. yesterday. Now, we are still waiting for a ruling day for President Yoon's impeachment, which is yet to be announced. Now, it's safe to say that the ruling will surely take place in April next month, right?
Yes, the Constitutional Court hasn't set a date for its ruling on President Yoon's impeachment case. Looking at past cases, the court usually gives at least 2 days' notice before a decision. So the fact that nothing's been announced yet makes it pretty likely that the ruling will be pushed into April. It's already been a month since the final arguments wrapped up, and while the justices are still deliberating every day, there's no confirmation on when the decision will come. That makes it pretty unlikely we'll see a ruling date this week.
Well, April 18th is obviously not an appropriate date to be the ruling day, considering there's also the day that the terms of 2 of the justices they're involved in the case come to an end. And other than April 18th, which day in April do you think has the highest possibility of being the big day for President Yoon?
Well, it's hard to predict specific date, but I think it will be the first or second week of April. Let's say April 8th or 9th, maybe. These dates ensure that all justices involved can sign the decision, avoiding any procedural controversies. The final deadline, widely expected, is April, like you just mentioned, 18th, when Justice Moon Young-bae and Justice Lee Mi-san are set to retire from the Constitutional Court.
Alrighty, sir. Thank you so much for connecting with us. As always, you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
South Korea's UN ambassador has called on North Korea to stop sacrificing its people to maintain its regime in exchange for Russian support, stressing that the Ukraine war has caused serious suffering. Speaking at the UN Security Council meeting on the maintenance of peace and security of Ukraine on Wednesday, Ambassador Hwang Jung-gu called for Moscow and Pyongyang to end their military cooperation. The envoy said the war has not only led to suffering for the Ukrainian people, Russian soldiers and their families, but also those of North Korea. He also said that interviews with captured North Korean troops revealed that the North Korean leadership deceived him to believe they were sent to Russia for training. The birth rate here in South Korea continued its positive momentum in the first month of 2025. Around 24,000 babies were born in January, up 11% compared to a year ago. Our Park Jun-han reports.
As of January, the number of childbirths in South Korea has been on the rise for 7 consecutive months. According to Statistics Korea's data on Wednesday, the number of childbirths in January 2025 was 23,947. This number is 11.6% higher than the 21,461 births in January 2024. That's the biggest percentage increase since related data was first compiled. South Korea's total fertility rate, the average number of children a woman would have during her lifetime, also increased from January 2024's 0.8 children to this January's 0.88 children. The statistics show an increase in the total fertility rate for 25 to 29-year-olds, those in their 30s, and those aged 40 and over. The number of marriages in South Korea has been rising for the past 10 months, with the marriage rate increasing by over 10% compared to the year before for all those 10 months, except for June 2024 and January 2025. In January 2025, the number of marriages came to 20,153, 0.7% higher than that of January last year.
If you look at the marriage growth rate, it has been increasing since April 2024 until now. In January 2025, there was a 0.7% increase, so it looks like the growth rate has decreased a little bit. But it's actually due to the impact of 4 fewer reporting days because of the Seollal holiday in January 2025. If the number of reporting days hadn't decreased by 4, the marriage rate would have been in the 20% range, or at least in double-digit growth.
Even though there has been a recent increase in births and marriages, the declining population in aging society remain concerns for South Korea. As a result of 39,473 deaths in January 2025, the country saw a natural population decline of 15,526 people. Park Junan, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Dami.
Ji-hee, let's begin over in Bolivia, which has seen torrential rains and severe flooding. Give us the updates.
Yes, Bolivia is battling against severe flooding as rainfall continues to batter the nation. On Wednesday, Bolivian President Luis Arce announced a national emergency in responses to the worst flooding the country has experienced in 4 decades. Continuous heavy rains have led to widespread flooding across all 9 departmental regions, with Beni, Pando, and northern La Paz among the hardest hit areas. This has resulted in at least 51 deaths, displaced tens of thousands, and affected more than 370,000 families nationwide. The Bolivian government is speeding up emergency funding and aid deliveries. While Bolivia's rainy season typically lasts from November to March, authorities forecast the intense rains to last until mid-April. In the Gaza Strip, large protests have emerged as people voice opposition to Hamas and demand an end to war. Since Tuesday local time, for 2 straight days, hundreds of Palestinians gathered in the northern Gaza streets of Beit Lahiya to protest against Hamas governance. Demonstrators chanted slogans such as "Hamas out," "Down with Hamas rule," and "We want to live in peace," expressing frustration and exhaustion over the prolonged war with Israel. The protests represents the largest public dissent against Hamas since the conflict began in October 2023. The recent collapse of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has led to intensified Israeli airstrikes, further exacerbating civilian suffering. Hamas official Bassem Naim said people have the right to cry out in pain, but criticisms must be directed at Israel. French President Emmanuel Macron announced Wednesday an additional $2.2 billion worth of military aid for Ukraine. The package includes anti-tank missiles, air defense systems, armored vehicles, drones, and additional Mirage fighter jets. The announcement was made during a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris ahead of a summit involving around 30 nations, referred to as the Coalition of the Willing. The coalition aims to enhance support for Ukraine and discuss Europe's role in deterring future Russian aggression. In the U.S. state of Minnesota, a 2-year-old Maine Coon named Mr. Pugsley Addams has set a new Guinness World Record following an official announcement on Wednesday for the longest tail on a living domestic cat. The cat has a tail that measures an impressive 46.99 centimeters long. The feline's owner noted that Pugsley's tail drew attention during his initial veterinary visits, prompting the official measurement. Described as having a mischievous yet affectionate nature, Pugsley was named after a character from the American sitcom The Addams Family.
We are finally seeing the rain we've been waiting for. Light rain is falling in parts of central regions along the southern coast and Jeju this morning. It will gradually spread to the rest of southern provinces in the afternoon. While it's much needed, especially in the areas affected by wildfires in Gyeongsang-do and surrounding regions, unfortunately, the rain is not as heavy as hoped. Less than 5 millimeters in the area, but at least the dryness in the air will be eased with humidity boosted. For now, dry weather alerts continue across the eastern regions, and the wildfire risk alert remains at the highest level nationwide. Adding to the fire risk, intense winds will continue today. Temperatures are staying on the warmer side, topping out at 20 degrees Celsius in the capital, Daegu at 24 degrees. But dust levels are forecast to rise again in the west of central regions beginning in the afternoon. But today's rain will bring chilly air to the country, so please do expect a big drop in temperatures through the weekend. Take well care and stay safe.
That wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. in Korea time. Until then, goodbye.